Hello, friends, and welcome to Home is Where the Body Is. I'm Jen, an ADHD woman with EDS, POTS, complex PTSD, and OCD, shaped by an abusive religious upbringing. I spent much of my life feeling like I was balancing precariously over an endless pit, constantly reaching for a stable home that always seemed just out of reach. Today, I can honestly say that home is wherever I am right now, built on the stable ground that's growing out of a deepening relationship with my body and myself. In this podcast, I share the lived experiences that brought me here, in case it helps someone feel less alone or supports them on their own journey home. Today, I'd like to talk about diet culture, and specifically a book I read called The Anti-Diet that really opened my eyes up to how we are all kind of being gaslit by society and the medical field in terms of what effect weight actually has on health and how much it is actually in our power to change our own weight. Bear with me here. I promise I'm not anti-science or anti-medicine or anti-vax or any of those things. In fact, I am pro-science and pro-research, and have read my fair share of research papers, and the research actually shows, to me, the research shows that we are being gaslit. So, anyway, let's get into it. So, the book is Anti-Diet, and I did not properly prepare. I need to Google who the author is again. Anti-Diet: Reclaim Your Time, Money, Well-Being, and Happiness Through Intuitive Eating by Christy Harrison. So, I read this book and learned that society, diet culture, and medical field have all been gaslighting me about weight my entire life. And I do promise that this is related to the general podcast theme of finding home in our own nervous systems and in our own bodies. So I could go on a very long rant about all the ways the medical field has gaslit me. You know, dismissing female pain, blaming everything on anxiety, or, oh, you're probably just on your period. Oh, you're not on your period? It probably still has to do with your menstrual cycle in some way. I think most women have experienced that at some time or another. But for now, I'll focus on the ubiquitous messages regarding weight. So, the Anti-Diet book exposes, and it does cite its sources, it exposes the claims that are made regarding weight that are completely unsupported by accurate scientific research, right? The claims that it's, first of all, that it's possible to keep weight off long term, and that it is beneficial to health to do so, and or has a negative effect on health if you're above a certain weight. Those are the claims that seem to be completely unsupported by accurate scientific research. It's mind-blowing to learn that the scientific research overwhelmingly points to there being no reliable way to lose weight and keep it off, because the body will inevitably attempt to regain its internally programmed ideal weight. So there are a couple of sources that the book cites related to this. They're like on the long-term effects of dieting, a review revealing that dieting rarely leads to long-term weight loss and often doesn't improve health outcomes. There's one called Long-Term Maintenance of Weight Loss, showing that even with structured programs, most people regain lost weight over time with limited evidence of long-term maintenance. I will link those in the show notes. While we are bombarded with messages regarding the dangers of weighing above a certain amount, there there in fact seem to be no studies that actually account for the effects of weight stigma when examining the health outcomes of people in larger versus smaller bodies. So what I mean is like if a larger bodied person shows up to the doctor and complains about a certain ailment, um, the doctor might say, "Oh, well, it's because of your weight. So lose weight and then come back." Where that person has a health issue that may in no way be related to their weight. And so they have more negative health outcomes because they're not being treated for their actual health problems. Or this is something that I've experienced as a invisibly disabled person. You just get so much anxiety around going to the doctor that you just choose not to go. And there's also a study cited in the book um, about weight stigma that explains how weight stigma itself contributes to psychological stress and poorer health outcomes independent of the person's BMI. So, as we know, in a good scientific study, you have to control for other potential factors, right? Otherwise, you might falsely say, oh, people weigh more have worse health outcomes, therefore it's due to their weight. But it could be a completely different factor. People who experience weight stigma also happen to be people who have larger bodies, and people who experience weight stigma have worse health incomes. As the book points out, correlation does not equal causation, and also this applies to many other areas of human diversity as well. I think that people who do not fit into the molds defined by capitalism, the patriarchy, and the other dominant social forces that we live under are often blamed for the logical outcomes of being unable to receive the proper medical care, being discriminated against in the workplace, and overall being judged for their gender, skin color, or inability to conform. Um, so kind of what I mean by that is like, oh, like disabled people tend to be, I don't know if this is true, but if it's like disabled people tend to be poor. Oh, I know a good one. Like black people, I believe, are statistically poorer than white people. Why? Probably because of institutionalized racism. Probably because of the after effects of their entire population being enslaved. Um, so that's a clear example, but also like I believe it is true that the men have higher wealth, like hold a lot more wealth collectively than women. And it's like, why? Not because women are worse at making money, but because women have historically been unable to hold wealth and, discrimination and all of those things. I'm just really tired of society blaming people for the very logical outcomes of the stigma and lack of access that they experience. Um, I would recommend, if you're interested in this, reading the book. Does a much better job of explaining it than I do. Um, and if you're interested to go even further into like the body positivity movement, there's another really great book, and I will link both of these in the show notes, but it's called The Body Is Not an Apology. Shit, I need to Google this again. It's Sonya. Oh, Sonya Renee Taylor. Remembered it. Is the author. And it goes even further into like how our bodies are not something to apologize for, whether it be our weight, our skin color, our disability, our gender, etc., etc. But to stay on topic with this podcast, I also want to acknowledge that I am privileged to be in a relatively small body, but even I was told as a teenager, aka, let's remember, a teenager is a literal child, right? I was under 18, um, to eat less or risk graduating college ugly and alone. There's so many things to unpack there that I am not going to unpack about the assumptions that this doctor who told me that made. It's a man, by the way. Not a white man, an Asian man, but it was a man. Um, I like college. So what if you graduate college single? Why is that even a problem? Also, people are not ugly. Like, I think there are a lot of very hot people in larger bodies. So that's, attraction is subjective. It's very um bold of him to claim that I would have become ugly simply by gaining a few pounds. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack there, but I just did want to acknowledge my privilege that I am in a smaller body. And also wanted to point out that even in a smaller body, I still got told as a child to stop eating so much or insert catastrophic outcome here. So I can't even imagine what people in larger bodies must experience, even as children. So, what happened to me internally after I read this book and came to this realization? And by the way, I didn't just randomly pick up this book. This book was suggested to me by a friend. Um, like, I don't want to come off as some grandly enlightened individual who somehow is able to see all of the stigma that I have that has been trained into me and is able to just like find the right books to open my eyes and eradicate it. That is not what happened. Um, so after I realized that I was being gaslit by society and the medical field in this specific topic, I stopped measuring my worth by the numbers on a scale, which sounds relatively simple, but I think for a lot of particularly women, that can be a very mind boggling thing to contemplate. But also, I stopped measuring my worth by the numbers on a paycheck or any other outward measure of success enforced on me by this gaslighting society. Like, I felt like it wasn't just about weight and diet culture. It also has become about society saying, like, oh, you should be able to make money. You have opportunities. It should be easy. Just get a job. Everybody can get a job. And if you can't get a job, we'll pay you not enough to live on via disability payments. Um, anyway, so I think a lot of times judging our worth by the numbers on a scale or a paycheck or whatever, maybe for some people, friend count on Facebook or whatever. Um, I feel like we're not always consciously aware, at least for me, I don't think I was always necessarily consciously aware that I was judging myself based on those numbers, and perhaps also judging other people based on their numbers as well. I think sometimes this type of metric is so ingrained into us that we kind of have to intentionally get rid of it. Otherwise, it's just so automatic and unconscious, I feel like. I have spent most of my life attempting to force both my body and my brain into conformity so that I could finally be good enough, whatever that is, for a society that has never set me up for success, all the while blaming myself when I inevitably failed. Right? I pretended to be holistic, convinced myself that I was straight while chasing male approval, and allowed the numbers on both my paycheck and my bathroom scale to determine my self worth. Now, I grant myself, or at least try to grant myself. I think this is a work in progress. I think none of these topics that I talk about are one day I just woke up and it flipped, right? I think most of these things are two steps forward and one step back type of deal. But I try to grant myself and all other humans inherent worth simply based on existing. Now I value how I feel, what nourishes me, and what protects my mental and emotional well being. I define success on my own terms. And that can be many different things for many different people. Um, I previously talked about letting go of outcome attachment. I think it was on the last episode. And it applies here too. No longer am I attempting to control my inputs in order to engineer the exact output that gains approval from society, but I'm shifting towards inputting what feels good and right to me and allowing the outcome to fall where it may. I think of this like rate dependent and independent variables. Um, what I've been trying to do my whole life is um, given the dependent variable the outcome that I'm looking for, I solve for X, solve for the input, and then try to do that input to get that outcome. Whereas now what I'm trying to do is X, I define X. The input is what makes me feel good, what makes me be the version of myself that I most want to be. And then Y, the outcome, the dependent variable, it's just whatever the equation outputs, and that's okay with me. It is hard though. To be clear, this is very hard, especially for someone like me with historically a lot of OCD based doom spiral anxiety, especially when society is actively encouraging the doom spiral, right? Like that doctor, um, when I was a teenager who said, "Oh, you gained like 5 pounds. You're gonna keep gaining weight, and when you graduate college, you're gonna be ugly and alone and sick." That is a doom spiral, and society actively encourages these doom spirals. So I do want to acknowledge that this shift is can be extremely hard and can be quite a process, and it's something I'm still working on. But I will say that so far, I think it has been very helpful for me to recognize that like these standards are there's like so many layers. First of all, we're being gaslit that these standards are even achievable. They're so unreasonable. We're being gaslit that these standards that we should even want to necessarily achieve these standards, that they benefit us in any way other than conforming to a society that doesn't like us anyway and isn't setting us up for success anyway. And then that's the second layer is society isn't even setting us up for success. The standards are we're gaslit about how reasonable the standards are. We're gaslit about being set up for success. We're not being set up for success. Um yeah, okay. Maybe it's just two layers. maybe the third layer is, and it's the wrong, we're solving the equation the wrong way around anyway. You can't control for the outcome when there are like 800 different variables. That is what is it? An undetermined system when there's like one equation, but there are like five different variables to solve for. You literally cannot solve that equation. You literally cannot solve for the inputs. Um so yeah, maybe that's the third layer. The equation isn't even solvable. And apologies if I used too much math speak. I know not everybody's brains um, learn the same way. I think in math speak a lot, but I know not everybody does. And I want um, the podcast to be accessible. And by the way, um, if I ever use math speak or whatever and it sounds confusing and you're like, oh, I feel stupid. Please don't feel stupid. You're not stupid. Um, it's a it's a pet peeve of mine, I guess, that society seems to teach people that being uneducated is the same as being stupid, and also that being uneducated is somehow a moral failing when education is actually expensive and it's a privilege to obtain an education, as I did. Um, I promise I have met a lot of very educated people who are very stupid. It's just they use the big words, and I've met a lot of very uneducated people who are extremely intelligent, in my opinion. And I'm highly educated, but only in my field. When I hear people from other fields talk, I feel really stupid. But it's really just the terminology, right? It's really just a matter of whether or not you know the terminology or the specific concepts they're talking about. Anyway, that was a little side rant. Um, back on topic. By honoring myself as worthy wherever I am, and refusing to jump through my own ass to conform to society's impossible quantitative standards, I was allowed to already be okay, allowing myself to already be okay, instead of remaining on the road to one day being okay. In one of the like body positivity movement books that I read, or I read it somewhere, someone was talking about like there's this concept of like, oh, I'll go on that vacation when I lose weight. I'll start dating when I lose weight. I'll do X, Y, or Z when I lose weight. And I also think, in my experience, a lot of people apply it to partnering up as well. Like, I've often had the thought of like, oh, find a place to settle down um, once I get married. Or get married again, since I've already been married in my cult that I grew up in. Get married for real this time. Although, now that they're trying to attack the no-fault divorce laws, I am strongly considering just never getting married again. But anyway, again, sidetrack. Um, what if you just accepted that you might never lose weight and you might never find a partner and just do the thing that you want to do now? And that's kind of what this concept is for me. By throwing away these stupid, impossible standards that I'm not even set up for success on, and I don't even know if I would want to meet them anyway without society's gaslighting and pressuring. Now I can allow myself to say, I am okay here where I am. I am at home, I am okay. Rather than, I am on the road to one day being okay. One of those is restful, and the other one is I'm still not good enough, you know? One of them is not restful by definition because you're still on the road. So I also think this dropping of impossible standards applies to everyone else as well. Right? We cannot truly see ourselves as inherently worthy if we're still judging the weights, the incomes, whatever of other people. So, how do we actually do this? For me, recognizing that I was being lied to and the anger that rose up because of it, so much anger, was a huge factor in setting the boundary of refusing to live up to society's arbitrary standards. Right? Like, oh, this was all a lie? You've been gaslighting me this whole time? Okay. Well, then I don't give a shit about your stupid, impossible standards anymore. That was a bit of like harnessing the anger to put the boundary. But mostly, it was just also allowing things to happen, like allowing myself to eat what my body felt like it needed, allowing my income to fall as a result of protecting my energy at work, and watching the world not end because of it. And I do want to acknowledge that there is some privilege in this perspective, as stigma against large bodies is real, as is the need for livable income. So saying, I can allow my body to potentially get a little bigger, or, I can allow my income to potentially fall a little bit. In some ways, that is a privileged perspective of someone who has a naturally smaller body or a naturally higher well, not naturally, but whatever, higher income. Um, but I think that even if we are forced to conform externally in some ways, it still helps to remind ourselves that internally we see ourselves as just fine, just as we are now, right? Like, even if we have to give in a little to society's pressure in order to keep a job or get healthcare and all of these things, you can do that and still internally say, but I think I'm fine just as I am. Life is not some goddamn job performance review, and I refuse to keep treating it as one. And by the way, I also want to mention before we end is that something that kind of tripped me up internally a little bit as a woman with the body positivity movement is this thought of like, oh, wait, if I if I'm supposed to see all bodies and everything is equal, then I have to be attracted to all bodies and everything, right? No, wrong. There's a difference between seeing someone as inherently worthy and an equal human being and being attracted to that person. You can certainly see someone as being worthy of love, an equal human being, but not feel like you owe them attraction. You don't have to be attracted to them. You don't have to date them. And the reason that I'm calling this out is I feel like for me, and I'm guessing for other women as well, there is this societal pressure, this patriarchal conditioning that to reject a man, to see a man as unattractive, is bad. And I think part of that comes from some men under this patriarchal conditioning develop an entitlement and entitled feelings. Sometimes I feel like even unconscious, like they're not even aware of it and how fucked up it is. But some men develop, in my experience, this unconscious entitlement to women's bodies and attraction and attention. Patriarchy says men are worthy when women are attracted to them Patriarchy says women should want men to pick them. Patriarchy says women are just waiting around for men to pick them. Um, so what I've noticed is sometimes these men who have this internal patriarchy conditioning, sometimes they see a woman who's not attracted to them as a woman who is actively harming them, which is absolutely not true. Like, I think that sometimes the patriarchal conditioning creates this confusion between inherent worth and being attractive, right? Women are only worthy if they are attractive to men. And sometimes the opposite, I'm not quite sure. Actually, no, that's not true. Men are definitely considered worthy in the patriarchy outside of women being attracted to them. But I do still think there's sometimes this conflation where it's like, oh, a man thinking, oh, this woman isn't attracted to me. That means she's actively harming me in some way. Um, anyway, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent. I do think I would like to one day do an episode, hopefully one day soon, about my feminist stance because I do think that coming into my own as a feminist and specifically understanding my specifics, um, I don't know what to call it, my specific feminist category has been really helpful for me in feeling at home in my own body and nervous system because for so long I thought that who am I to be confident in my beliefs, you know? So, anyway, perhaps look out for that type of episode in the future, but I'm just trying to say to the women out there, seeing your own body and the bodies of others is inherently worthy of love, having value just for existing. That's absolutely not the same thing as being obligated to be attracted to all bodies. You do not owe anybody your attention. You don't owe anybody your own body, no matter what the patriarchy tells you. Okay, I think I'll end it there. As we come to the end of this episode, I want to thank you for spending this time with me. If anything in this episode resonated with you and you'd like to share a thought, reflection, or bit of feedback, you're very welcome to email me. And if this podcast feels supportive or meaningful to you, I'd appreciate it if you left an honest review or shared it with someone who might also find it helpful. That's how this work finds the people that it's meant for. You've been listening to Home is Where the Body Is. I'm Jen, and I wish you a safe journey home.